Hi, podcast listeners, and welcome back to Modern Ways, Eco-Friendly Homes. On today's episode, we have Marla Esser-Close, and she is from her very own website and podcast, The Green Home Coach, and she also has a second website, Everyday Green Homes, right? Your podcast is the Green Home Coach, correct?
Actually, the podcast is Everyday Green Home, and there is, I know, right, Green Home Coach is the overall business, but it's so confusing, so just go with it.
That's a good moment to mention that Marla is soon to merge her two websites for any of you who are currently familiar with Marla and her work. So she will be merging them soon. And which one are you merging them into, the Everyday or the Coach?
So Green Home Coach will be the main website, and then Everyday Green Home /shop will be the Everyday Green Home, the old URL. So anybody can type whatever they're used to typing and it'll still get them there.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And before we dive into the episode, real quick, podcast listeners, you know you're listening to Modern Ways. And for anyone who is new to my show, this is a podcast for sustainably minded folk who want to reduce their carbon footprint on a large scale. In each episode, I work to share tangible steps to reduce your home's emissions, live healthier, save money, and build community. So on this episode, Marla and I are talking about living healthier in our homes. And she has put out two really amazing guides. And one is called The 5 Myths of Green Homes. And that's the one that we're going over today. And then the second one is 9 Steps. What's the proper title? I actually don't have it.
9 ways for a healthier home.
Perfect.
I had to do that from memory.
I would hope so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we'll include the 9 ways for a healthier home PDF guide in the link in the show notes, but today we're going over the 5 myths of green homes. And this 5 myth is just so content rich, and I'm really excited to go over this with Marla right now. So Marla, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started into green home coaching, creating your own podcast, and creating these awesome guides.
Oh, thank you, Madison. You know, strangely enough, it started years before I started the business. And I've always been kind of a waste not, want not kind of girl, especially with my grandmother's influence and stuff. And then, I don't know, 15-ish years ago, my daughter had a horrible, horrible reaction. We happened to be on vacation on a cruise ship, and it took me weeks to dig into all the material safety data sheets and blah, 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 and find out that she was allergic to one of the additives that they put in their laundry products, which, I mean, you want sanitized laundry, but, you know, in there, and somebody's going to have an issue, and she was it. And her doctors recommended that we get anything with fragrance, dyes, or extra chemicals out of any products that would touch her skin. So that started me on my journey. And as I started reading labels to find stuff that was going to be better for her, I started learning how much not needed stuff was in our products that we use on a day-to-day basis. So that started my personal journey to clean up our routine for the things that we were bringing into our home, the things we were putting on our skin, the things we were eating. And then I had a chance to join a former colleague in his brand new startup boutique energy efficient firm when I lived in St. Louis. And I felt like I'd come home. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, I am with a whole bunch of people that get how I feel and get what we need to do. And there is actually a pretty rich sustainability and green culture, all about healthier people, healthier communities, and healthier world, right there in St. Louis. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Right here in the Midwest. Who knew? And it's grown quite a bit since then. So I parted company with my friend's business after a few years. And we had spent a lot of time doing the support work for green home certifications, right as they were really kind of starting to catch on a little bit. The funnest part of that was doing an extreme home makeover that we got to certify, and they never showed it on the silly TV show, but it was still a lot of fun. But anyway, we parted company. We're still super great friends, but he wanted to go more technical and I wanted to go more mainstream. So that was really when I birthed the company. That was in 2010. And I had a different name back then. And I did a lot of work with builders and remodelers, helping them to certify their homes and their properties, remodeled, new, single family, multifamily. It didn't matter. We could do it. And since then, it's evolved. I took it to Green Home Coach and really focused more with delivering knowledge, information, and advice online. And that was when the podcast came out in 2016, and we just going from there. So that was a long answer to your question.
That's really amazing. So just to clarify and make sure I'm understanding correctly, are you saying that you 15 years ago when your daughter got the skin irritation from the laundry detergent, and then 5 years after that, you started your company and started consulting builders, and that all came from the skin irritation?
It probably was. I was trying to think back about when it was. That probably
Wow.
was around 5 years. But yeah, that I think I had a certain mindset already that when something happened, it was like everything clicked and it just kind of started falling into place. And that reaction that she had was like the first step. And I was like, I had all this stuff in my background that I didn't know I had. You know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And yeah, and then so when that was the first click. And then when I joined my friend's energy efficiency firm, that was the second click. And then it just kept rolling from there. So
Wow.
it's been a crazy journey. We've had some crazy bumps in the road, but I'm still here.
Nice. That actually reminds me, I was just listening to the Be Here Now guest podcast yesterday, and one thing she said was there's certain suffering that leads to more suffering, but then there's another suffering that leads to like peace. And it sounds like that was the kind that y'all went through.
I'm not there as much. My husband had some significant health issues over the past 4 years, and that was actually kind of why I started my podcast, which is kind of crazy. That I was preparing to go out and be a speaker and do workshops on the road and stuff. And then when my husband was diagnosed with a benign brain tumor, I stopped everything and focused. We weren't even married yet. We still lived in 2 cities. So all my travel was coming to him to figure this out. Right about that same time, a business group I was working with, she said, hey, I told you I was thinking about starting this podcast package and I'm going to, you're in? And I'm like, okay. So off we went.
Oh, wow.
4 years and 100 plus podcasts ago. So you know what? When a door shuts, a window opens.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about your husband's brain tumor.
He's doing better, but it was a crazy, crazy ride.
Good. Yeah, and well, congratulations on starting your podcast. So you've had this going for how many years now?
4 years now.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I know you start this and you're thinking it's just a little old thing, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, that was wild. It's really given me a kind of a spine for our content, and that's been really helpful to know that we've got that backbone right there, and that we can focus on social media outreach and other outreach, based on what's happening with the podcast. I kind of hadn't considered myself a podcaster, and recently I was just a green home coach doing podcasts. So another identity.
So as far as your green home coach, when you told me you had the 2 separate guides, the 5 steps and the 9 steps, you said one was more for homeowners, and was that the 5 or the 9?
The 9, that's really aimed more at consumers.
Cool.
And I don't like that word consumers, but people that are buying things for their home and themselves.
Yeah. And then the 5 step you said is more for people on the back end of that, like builders, designers, real estate agents like myself.
Yep. People that work with homeowners and home dwellers. And one thing I really hope that people that live in rented or leased homes will remember is there's still a lot you can do, even if you do not own the property. And I think a lot of people think that they can't. So it's something I work to dispel.
And I'm really excited. Actually, I have some great news today. I was having a date day with my boyfriend, and I was like, he's buying a property, and he said, well, what can I do to make it more green? And because it's not like a certified green builder or anything like that, not that I'm aware of yet, but I'm looking into it, right? So
okay.
I said, well, do you have wind energy? Are you subscribed to the wind energy through Excel? Because that's who like is our go-to.
Good point.
Yeah, and he was like, oh no, I don't. And so he at the table he sat down and he looked it up and he switched to wind energy in probably 5 minutes.
Yeah. And many utility companies, electric companies, offer an option to have part or all of your bill be filled by renewable energy. And that's kind of weird the way it works, but it's a way for us to contribute on an individual basis to our utilities having more renewable energy.
Yeah.
So, awesome.
I know, it was so exciting. And then I also started to tell him about composting, and he's a super smart guy, but I got to inform him about composting, and it was really fun for me. And I was like, oh, I don't currently compost because I had to cut back on some bills this year, and unfortunately that was just one of them. But composting and switching to wind energy on your electric bill are two really easy things to do in an apartment.
So do y'all have citywide sponsored composting?
We have citywide sponsored composting from Denver Gov when it's a single family home, so like a detached, so it doesn't do apartments, and it may or may not do townhomes, but there's also a private company called the Denver Compost Collective, and I think there's at least one more. I'm just not super familiar with that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then of course, you can compost. We compost in our own backyard, and they even have apartment-sized composters now, or condo size, that you can use inside. So there's great options out there.
Yeah, the one I had for a while was just like a 1-gallon pail, and it had like a little lid that I had to press a button to open the lid, and I never had any fruit flies come around to it or anything. So it was very tight and secure, and I think they picked it up every week.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there you go. You're on your road.
There's 2 tips for today, podcast listeners.
There you go.
Let's just call it at that. I'm totally kidding. Let's definitely dive into these 5 myths, and I'm going to share my screen real quick for anyone who is listening on the video cast YouTube version. So let me get this going. Sometimes I'm not sure where the share screen button is. It's the big green one. So this is the sheet that you made, or the guide that you made, Marla. It's the 5 myths of green home that may be costing you. And I just want to kind of read through these and then let's talk about them.
Great.
So myth number 1 is green only matters to certain clients like millennials. Myth number 2, no one is asking for green homes. And as a real estate agent, my team and I could talk about this for hours. Myth number 3, green is expensive. Myth number 4, solar panels are the hallmark of a green home. And I love that you circled which tips are like the most important ones. And lastly, myth number 5, green is just the latest trend. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then, yeah, I'm going to have mine pulled up, and let's just start with number 1. Green only matters to certain clients like millennials. And
you're not quite are you a millennial? I don't know. You're close, right? Either way.
I'm on the cusp, I think, because I'm born in the mid 90s.
Okay.
Yep. So I watched, Rugrats.
Well, and
I also grew up with a phone.
There you go, right? So millennials and younger y'all have grown up with a whole different set of circumstances than my generation has. And, there's so many things that we assumed. I remember, like when plastic became very pervasive in our lives, and we thought it was great because it didn't break. Little did we know that everything would become plastic. And, we've kind of gone from one side to the other. But here's why the whole comment about millennials is so relevant. So many people look to the younger generations. That's kind of where our trends start. And then they move up the demographics. So they kind of leak up or work their way up the demographics from younger to older. So a lot of people have seen so much action and so much vocalizing in especially the millennials for green and sustainability. Now, let me caution y'all. Green and sustainability is really a catch-all term that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So it encompasses, things that are environmentally friendly, healthier, safer, things that make your home more comfortable, more durable, less maintenance. So there's all kinds of benefits that arise around this. But the whole concept of going green is only a means to the end. It's not the end. It's not the ultimate goal, right? I mean,
Right.
what if you were to pronounce that I've gone green? What, you get a green crown? No, I mean, this is the thing. So what has happened is, we've all looked, the millennials are doing this. You know who the second biggest, and they're just barely behind the millennials, enactor of green, in air quotes, folks, green and sustainable practices is, from a demographic standpoint?
Who?
The baby boomers. And a lot of it kind of started because of the energy efficiency savings that they could have. And think about it, as you're getting older, you're working towards a fixed income and you want the predictability of knowing what your home's going to deliver. You want the less maintenance, you want the more durability. And these are all things that we get from a green home. So different people want different things out of their homes, but green and sustainable practices are almost always the route to get them. It's just understanding what people want out of their homes. I can't imagine that you've ever walked up to a potential client or a client and said, hey, let me sell you a home that's bad for you. It's
Oh, yeah.
Make you sick.
Those are the selling points for sure.
Oh, yeah, right. Or how about, hey, let me sell you this house. It's going to cost you a fortune in electric bills.
Right.
No. So everybody wants, I say everybody, most everybody wants the benefits that we get, but we have to understand what's important. So what's important to a retired couple may be really different than what's important to a young mom who has a baby that crawls around on the carpet and she wants to keep her safe. So it's understanding what's important to that demographic, helping to peel back the layers enough to find those features in the homes that they are looking for, building or remodeling.
And that is one thing that my team and we're actually working on a guide right now. And maybe it's even in your 9-step guide about how to specifically identify those features. So I was looking up the cabinets that the builders of the townhome that my boyfriend is buying. I was looking at the cabinets to see, like, well, how toxic are they? And they're like, we're committed to sustainability and we're part of this organization. So I was like, okay, great. Like, let me try and find out more about it. Like, how are you committed to sustainability? And so it didn't dive deep into that. So I ended up leaving a voicemail and I'll reach back out this week. But I want specifics. I want to know.
But you found something really important. You found out about green labels.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that those cabinets may have been labeled KCMA ESP, which is Kitchen and Cabinet Manufacturers Association Environmental Sustainability, I think, principles.
I think.
And it's usually, if there's a sticker, it's usually on the inside of the cabinet door underneath the kitchen sink. And KCMA ESP has a certain level of guidelines that the company adheres to in the manufacture of their cabinets. But the number one thing you want to look for in cabinets is that they are formaldehyde free. So if you have pressed wood in furniture or in homes, sometimes they still have formaldehyde in them. And that's one we don't want. That's a known carcinogen.
I still had the tab pulled up, so I just looked, and you're absolutely right. It is the KCMA ESP standard. And
good job.
Okay, so those are good.
Yeah.
Okay, yay! Those are safe cabinets.
But these green labels, and I teach a lot about the different green labels that are available, because that way you don't have to do all the research. If they have these labels, that they're doing what they say, because they are independently third-party verified. And that's really a big help. It saves us all a lot of research.
Yeah, I would love to. You said you have a course on this?
I do have a course on this. It's actually, I'm offering it by individual request to me right now, but I can actually do entire webinars on this, teaching, and help also go through the basics of the different categories of green and sustainable practices and products and how they matter in your home.
Marla, were you a teacher at one point?
No, but I might have been in a past life.
Yeah. Or I think you're a teacher right now. It's just very.
Thank you. I'm a researcher by nature. And so I'm like, I've learned all this, and we experiment so much at our own home. And I want to share all that with people. I want them to learn from my mistakes. I want them to benefit from what I've learned and pass it on. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
So that's one of my goals.
So before we move past step or myth 1, you said for cabinets, avoid formaldehyde, look for the green label. And what about for carpets? Like in your example, you were saying the new mother with her, or the new mother and father with their, or whatever. You could have
little
two
baby.
mothers. Yeah.
Like on the
The
floor.
small baby.
Right.
Just thinking about the inclusion, but the baby on the floor, on the carpet. So is there something that, or like even like a finish on hardwood or linoleum?
So there's a lot of different ways a floor product and a carpet product can be green and sustainable. It could be natural. It could be chemically responsible. It could use recycled materials, or it may be some combination of the above. And this is where each of us understanding what's most important to us really comes into play. So for instance, if I have allergies and asthma or COPD or some other respiratory ailment in my home, that emissions from whatever flooring products, carpet products I choose is going to be first and foremost on my mind, so that it's the health and well-being side, right? So for instance, just a quickie on this, first thing we'd recommend is don't use carpet. Carpet is a big old trap for everything in your home. Dust carries other things on it, and if there's a lot of dust in your home, it settles in the carpet, and as much as we vacuum, it doesn't all come out. So and I have one rug I absolutely love, and it's long and it catches everything. And fortunately, it's a small rug, so we can take it outside and beat the heck out of it.
Yeah.
Number 2, if you really do have to have carpet, try to limit it to the bedrooms. So here's the flip side of that. We sleep in our bedrooms. But a lot of people want it for, softer, warmer, etc. But area rugs are a great way to go and give us more flexibility in how we do that. Then you have all kinds of choices of flooring. There's, you could teach 6 classes just on flooring. There's 3 different certifications that typically apply on the flooring side, and one of them is called Floor Score. One of them is called the Carpet and Rug Institute, something label. And then you also have GreenGuard, which is an emissions-based label. So knowing that you can at least look for these labels is really, really helpful. I am working, it's kind of going to be the beginning of next year, but I want to work on a little ebook that'll have these green labels in them, because this is so helpful. It just gives us some guideposts.
Nice. I had to laugh when you said Floor Score, because my mind said
7 years ago.
Yes. I'm very.
There you go. Great minds think alike.
I couldn't get. I don't know the second one that you said, because I couldn't get past that.
It's all good.
I'll listen to the recording. It's good.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and something I hadn't thought about until we're talking right now is like looking up labels, and instead of doing all the research by myself,
Right.
and asking builders or cabinet makers, who's your material, where do you get your material from? That makes so much sense, because you go to the grocery store, it's labeled GMO free. You don't have to go look up, or not GMO, but yeah, GMO or gluten free, or
Right.
it's rainforest certified, all those things.
Yeah. And a lot of us have learned from food labels, and they've set a good precedent for other things in our lives. So there you go.
Nice. Okay, cool. Well, I'm really excited to look up those labels, and I love that your first tip was just don't use carpet. It is really nice. I have a friend who was suffering from allergies for probably, I think, the full 2 years that he moved here. And they're cleaners. Their company is called Wise Cleaners. They're here in Denver and Boulder. And so they did everything that they can to, like, okay, well, we're going to wear a mask when we go clean because is it the dust in the carpet or the ceiling fan? And so he had like some food allergies and asthma in the end. But yeah, they make sure wherever they live, they have the least amount of carpet in their homes as possible,
Yeah.
especially after cleaning it all the time, because you get to see how dirty
So
it
much
really
dirty.
is.
Yeah, that's really scary.
It is.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of tips on air quality that we do in our own homes, and that could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we should revisit that. So for the second myth, I think we did a fantastic deep dive into myth number 1. So it's not just millennials, it's everybody, because
Yep.
there's babies who need to be cared for about clean homes, and there's also older generations who want a set amount of bills that they know they're going to pay. And like you were saying, it's easier to take care of a wood finish than it is to always
Mhm.
be repainting your
Yep.
cabinets.
Yep. Or, maybe a tile floor versus something that needs to be refinished every few years. So
Yeah,
it's just making, setting your goals down and then making decisions that help you to reach those goals.
I
So
love
there you go, kind of logical.
that. So myth number 2, no one is asking for green homes.
And I don't know about you, but we do hear people asking for energy efficiency. That one has really started to catch on more. And a lot of people assume green is energy efficiency.
They do,
And
yes.
right. So when I teach green, I teach basically around a green building standard called the ICC 700 National Green Building Standard. How's that? We call it NGBS for short. And this one is endorsed by the National Association of Home Builders. And I've been working with it for, 10 years.
Okay.
But what it does, it provides a really good framework of 5 categories, 5 physical categories, and then 1 behavioral category to follow for homes that are being built or remodeled. And I also find that it provides really good structure for things we want to do to our homes. So it's, how efficient are your resources, your energy, your water? What's the interaction between your home and the land that it sits on? And that's not just landscaping, that's like sun orientation and all kinds of things. And then how good is your indoor environment? How, breathing particularly. I like to breathe and I like to breathe well. So, that's a big thing right now. But our homes can contribute to us breathing better. So that's your 5 physical categories. And then the 6th one is homeowner education and documentation. So we actually teach people how to keep their homes serving them, the people that live in it. Which is
Yeah.
most important. So, okay, I got off track.
No, I love
Why did
it.
I go down that rabbit hole?
What's the name of it again? Could you say it just one more time?
It's the National Green Building Standard.
Okay.
And there's a great website. It's just ngbs.com that really talks about the benefits of green building and green remodeling in terms of what kind of things we as homeowners and home dwellers want from our homes. And it's provided a really good framework for how to peel back the onion on what this all means and how many things we can do. And even if you just get to do 1 or 2 in a category, that's action, that's moving forward, that's doing something.
Yeah.
And actions speak.
Yeah.
They're profound. That's scary. Okay. So which myth are we
Well, I have heard you say, listening to a couple of your podcasts and reading over your guides and your website, that you're like, the biggest thing we need to do is take action. It doesn't really matter like what step you take. It doesn't matter if your home is
do it?
zero
I
emission.
sound like Nike.
Yeah.
Sorry
We're
about
on myth
that.
number 2. No one is asking for green homes. And as a real estate agent, and I recently joined a regenerative real estate team. It's with Neil Collins and Alyssa Collins, and I think you probably know them.
I don't yet, but I signed up for something on the website and Neil reached out to me. So I'm going to get a chance to talk with him soon. Yeah.
I told him I found someone who's really cool who has the green like guides, and he goes, "Is she happens to be from Oklahoma?" I was like, "She does indeed." So, yeah.
Well,
But
that's good. The universe has aligned for us, so yay.
it is a community over here talking about green homes. But yeah, so I'm with their real estate team now, which I'm super excited about. And a couple of my teammates, we've been talking, well, how do we, people don't really know what to ask for. They don't exactly know what
Right.
they want. And so that is with me and my team, our job is to tell people, did you know you can do this? Actually, well, what about this over here? And Alyssa told me this fantastic story that I think it was the sewer line was broken or something about the septic. Something was wrong with
Yeah,
the
you don't want
septic.
those going wrong.
Yeah, they were buying the house, but it was an older house in Portland. And she said, well, instead of getting a whole new septic and replacing it with just what the industry standard is, why don't we look into getting you on a gray water system? And so they do that now. Their septic flows into their yard, which waters their plants, and it's a perfectly safe and normal thing for people to do throughout ages of life.
Yep.
So
And there's financing programs that are available to help do those kinds of things in your homes. And some of them are tied to a refinance or a new home or remodel, and some of them aren't. And oftentimes, a lot of our lending people, because they're not used a lot, don't even really know they're around until they go dig through them. So there's, ask questions. And as a real estate practitioner, you have an opportunity to be that resource, which I love because that's what you guys are doing, to be a resource for your clients. And that's huge. And there's a lot to know, but if at least if you know where to go for the answers, you don't have to have them all in your head right at the beginning. So, but if people aren't asking for green homes, what are they asking for besides 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in my favorite school district?
that's exactly what people want.
It isn't what they want. It's what they've been trained to ask.
It's literally the most common, I want 3 beds, 2
Mm-hmm.
baths. That is you're right. It must be what people are trained to ask for because
Yeah.
that's what everyone wants. How
So
interesting.
COVID has changed all this too, by the way, because now what we need out of our homes, because we're living in our homes so much and so much harder,
Is I need an office
COVID has
space.
helped to change what we want in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
And, outdoor space, we need common spaces to be together, and we need private spaces to work and be schooled. And people, I keep reading article after article that people are moving out to the suburbs so they have more space. And I think the pendulum will settle after a while, but health and wellness in our homes has become smack in our face. Well, that's exactly what a green home certification or even just some of the green home features can give you. And features can be practices and they can be products that you buy. Some of the easiest things you can do is product swaps. And that's a great way to make a home greener, not necessarily green certified, but greener.
Mm-hmm.
So no, they're not asking for green homes, but they do want the health, the wellness, the safety, the comfort, the maintenance free, the durability. Those are all things we want.
Yeah, and I think and people are asking for, and we keep using this term green, and I know that you clarified that in the beginning, but I just want to clarify it again here in the middle, that green is just like a blanket term to ask
Mm-hmm.
for environmentally friendly, economically conscious, healthy, happy, all around giving
Right.
back to ourselves and not taking anything away from others.
Yeah, if you had to name the top 3 benefits that most people will want from their home, and they probably don't think about, it's safer, healthier, and more comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
And I do think people ask for green things because like, you go into your grocery store and there's a whole aisle, if it's not the whole grocery store, dedicated to products that have a lot less chemicals. And so it does start from like a very small level, like, okay, I know I clean with these products every day and every day I touch my counter. And so that's very much easy for people to grasp. But I think people haven't so much been quote unquote asking for green homes because we haven't been trained to ask for green homes.
Yep.
That's
Spot on.
You said it and I just thought it right now. But so myth number 3, green is expensive. And I think this really ties in with your next myth, which is number 4, solar panels are the hallmark of a green home. And I think maybe that's why people think that think that solar panels are the hallmark of a green home is because they're so expensive. It's like one of the fastest things that we're able to attain. And that they're one of my first podcast guests, you know, they were my
Yeah,
first
I
podcast.
think I listened to that one. And I'll come back to the solar panels because there's some fast changing things happening in the solar industry. And I am by no means a solar expert, but I hang out with some folks that are. And anyway, so let's hang tight. Let's go to green is expensive first.
Yes.
So number 1, doing the practices and the products in a home that will help it to be green certified can be more expensive. We find typically for a baseline certified home with an NGBS program, it is 3 to 5% above a code built house. What is a code built house? A code built house is just what the code in your city or state says it has to be, mainly from a safety perspective, and just it meets that level. Now, codes are different across the country. So some states have high enough codes that they're already building green homes. Other states may not have any statewide adopted code, and there's a much larger gap between what is code built and what would be necessary to green certify. But on average, nationally, 3 to 5%. And what typically happens with a home that is being green certified is that for instance, you insulate and air seal much better. So you build a much better sweater and windbreaker around that home. And because of that, you can use a smaller heating and cooling unit. And you can afford to use a better quality one. So a little bit cost up front, maybe not a lot because they kind of balance each other out, trade-offs. But now you've got a home that's going to use much less energy, and year after year after year, your operation cost is going to stay the same. And it's a shame that we don't include operational cost when we are figuring out eligibility for a loan, a standard loan. There are special loans that will let you do that, and they take into account that you're going to be spending much less on a monthly basis on your utilities. So yes, they are a little bit more usually. Why do we think they're so expensive? You have any idea?
Not to take
and it's not solar panels. It's I think it's some other things, but that's my opinion.
Well, just on my first thought, because I haven't put thought into this quite yet, this specific, and not to take a stab at Whole Foods, but I'm going with like, well, okay, I'll go with organic then, right? Because like Whole Foods says all their stuff is organic, and people are like, oh, organic is more expensive, and in some ways it is, but it's not terribly more expensive. It's probably 3% more expensive.
It's an incremental cost.
And I would like to say that 3 to 5% isn't that much, because by the time that you upgrade by the time that you paint your house and put value into your house, that is actually, like in Colorado, if you put a pool in your house, it's not giving you any value back. But if you build a patio and then you sell your house, it's going to sell for more than 5% than what you put into it. So 3 to 5% is not drastic.
And a reason a lot of homes that have features and elements already in them that are green, contribute towards health and safety and more comfort, is because nobody knows how to talk about them. So they don't get talked about, and the value that's in those features gets lost. And then the home gets sold for what the comps are, which are not built to a higher quality. So it gets into kind of a very interesting mess. There's actually a lady named Sandra Adomatis, who is a green appraiser and educator, and she's, oh my gosh, so smart. But she's done a couple of seminars that I've been to, and she helps appraisers and realtors to go through the process and see how to get better appraisals, how to get better comps, so that we can claim the value that are in these better homes. I'll try to get that information to you guys because that'd be a really helpful one for y'all.
Yes,
So,
please.
but here's the thing, folks. When we are doing so, the standard way of doing things has much larger economies of scale. And when we move out of economies of scale, it can cost a little more. Organic farming costs a little bit more because it's got different factors that are needed that are not available at a large, mega scale like a lot of the commercial agriculture is. But the other thing that I feel, in my opinion, although there's many that agree with me, is in the standard way of doing, a lot of costs are subsidized, or they're not held to the individual company that is building it. So for instance, if we're not asking people to put things back the way they found them when they're mining or foresting, that's not the right word, cutting wood to use for lumber, and if we're not taking accountability for all the steps that are included, that's a subsidized cost. So oftentimes green is not subsidized. And so you have a kind of a little bit of an upward hill because we're doing something different, even though there's many, many benefits to it. It doesn't have the economies of scale, and it may be encompassing more of the cost in that process. So those are some of my thoughts on why. And then I also think the other one is, what do you put in a home and garden magazine to show off a green home? The fanciest, most bells and whistles one you can find, right?
Yeah, you're going to put solar panels, you're going to put plants all over the place, you're going to put a
high-end
lot of
finishes.
light. Yeah.
So I have worked on homes that were Habitat for Humanity, which are pretty basic homes, and they were green certified. I have worked on neighborhood stabilization program homes, which is another government program to help bring neighborhoods back to be in good health. That again is a pretty basic house. It does not have to be a big old fancy house. And that's all kinds of houses can qualify. So it does not have to be expensive.
I think that's when your 9-step guide will really come in handy, is being able to show like, okay, and a lot of the things you don't even see, like insulation, new windows,
The non-sexy stuff.
yeah, they're practical things, because the practical aspect is what makes your home more energy efficient. It's not the
it does, but we need to save some for the beautiful things too, because that's what feeds our spirits.
I was about to say, well, it doesn't just have to be a finish on your wood, but it could also be a healthy finish on your wood.
Absolutely. My walls are painted with, I don't know if this was low VOC or no VOC, but nothing higher than low VOC has been in my homes for 10 or 12 years.
Nice. So myth number 3 has officially been busted. Green is expensive. And basically you said, Marla, that it does have a little bit of a cost addition to it, just because we're doing something different that doesn't have a lot of subsidies to it, but it's not gonna break your wallet. There's tons of options out there that have a similar cost.
And it's a great time. Like right now, lumber is super expensive. It's like doubled since April. Well, this is a great time to look at alternative building envelope techniques and practices and products. You could cut your lumber down by half because you wouldn't need exterior walls. You could just use lumber for interior walls. So there's, I'm hoping that some of the challenges that we're going through right now will also spur a lot of creativity.
Yeah. What is one good alternative to lumber?
For the outside of a home, 2 great alternatives are structural insulated panels, which are foam on the inside, and then OSB, which is oriented strand board, which is little chips of wood that are resin and heated together, so they make a piece of wood. And then so you've got the foam on the inside and then 2 pieces of the strand board, and they go together like a big puzzle, like a big 3D puzzle. Another great one, and a project I'm working on here right now, is insulated concrete forms. And these are the reverse. They look like Legos that are foam on the outside, and you fill the inside with concrete. Both types are very resilient. And as you can see, concrete in the middle of Tornado Alley is a big benefit too.
Oh, wow.
keep our home standing. Yeah, there's quite a few other types of alternative, but those are really the two biggest ones I run into.
What about for interior? So I know, like, wood cabinets, wood floors aren't really what they look like wood, but that's
Yeah,
not what things are actually made of anymore. So what's
you can get real wood, but there's also a lot of engineered wood products out there. We're seeing a lot of the tile that looks like wood. So they're long planks, and they look very much like wood. And tile usually has a fair amount of recycled product in it. So it can oftentimes be a really good option. What else do we see? There's actually vinyl-ish products like sheet floor coverings that are made to meet emissions, different labels. Like they'll meet the GreenGuard low emissions. Some of them, you have to look, you got to dig back and look at the paperwork to find it. We've seen a number of sheet products that have recycled content in them. So when I started in this, you had to go look special places. You can walk into your big box store now and get great options.
nice?
Yeah.
Well, that's lucky for me.
Yeah, right?
We millennials have it so easy.
There you go.
So myth number 4, solar panels are the hallmark of a green home. Let's bust this myth.
So solar panels contribute to the energy usage of a home. And even every solar installer I personally know will do something before they size the solar panels. And that is they will have the home undergo an energy analysis or assessment and tighten up the home first, because then you're not going to need as big a solar panel array because you're not going to have to offset as much energy. So what matters the most is really the building envelope. And think about it. How do you want to replace your building envelope? No, but we do regularly replace systems. I have friends that have had their solar panels for 10 or 12 years, and they're already talking about upgrading them because the newer panels are so much more efficient. And they've dropped in price significantly over the last 10 years. Solar panels are also becoming much more popular, and there's different ways to get solar, but they only address the energy component of the home. To truly be a green, I'm doing air quotes again, folks, a green home, if it's true, like if you want to certify a green home, it has to be several practices from all 5 of the categories and the behavioral and homeowner education category. So you can't just say, I'm going to major in energy efficiency and I'm not going to worry about indoor air quality. Doesn't go that way. So the solar panels being just energy efficiency does not qualify it for any other categories.
What are the 5 categories?
Again, that's where the home lives. So location, then efficiencies and resources, energy and water. So those are 3 categories. And then indoor environmental quality, or indoor, it's more than just indoor air quality, but that's how a lot of us think about it. And then the last one is this behavioral for homeowner education and documentation. So how to live in your home and know how to operate it to keep it green, to keep it the way you built it, and how to maintain it and what kind of products to use. And those are the kind of things that we can all do in our homes, regardless of how our homes are built.
Okay. Yeah, you did say those 5 categories a little while ago in the podcast, but I didn't realize those were these are the 5 categories.
They have much more technical names when you look in the certification guidelines. I like to talk lay people language.
Yeah, I agree. So myth number 5 is, and this is our last myth for the podcast, is green is just the latest trend. And I love that you added this in here because it's been around for decades, and you mentioned that in your guide too.
Yeah. And I think the moment that I really knew that green homes were a real accepted category of homes was when the National Association of Home Builders took an official position on it. And That's so exciting because the National Association of Home Builders is such a big factor in our home building industry. It's a great source of expertise. It's a great way for us to know our builders are doing above and beyond because they belong to an organization that gives them accountability and education. And when it was officially recognized, and I don't remember which year it was a ways back, it really, that to me, that was like, okay, this is it. We're all in agreement. This is really a thing and an ongoing and an important thing. And honestly, our homes have gotten somewhat better over time due to better and newer building techniques and materials. But the last time I looked at this, about 80% of us assumed our new homes were energy efficient. They're not necessarily. They can be, but they're not necessarily. And so there's some different programs out there to help you assess how energy efficient your home is, how you can get it better. And this is where this home energy assessment comes into play. A lot of our electric companies and utility companies offer a free or low cost home energy assessment or an online tool that you can use. So that's one of the best places to start with is, what you got to understand what your home is before you know how to improve it. And there is a part of the National Green Building Standard that even works on remodeled rooms and remodeled homes. And it allows you to do what I call incremental green so that you can, if you're only improving a room at a time, you're at least being able to follow the guidelines so that you're getting consistency and you've got those steps laid out for you of what things you can do. So, nobody wants to go backwards. We don't want to go to less healthy, less safe, and less comfort homes. So, we're going to keep going forward. And I think with all the technologies that we're seeing come out and all the ingenuity, I think there's just going to be a lot more promise going forward.
I really appreciate that you said no one wants to go backwards. I think there's a lot of counterculture that does want to sort of revert to a time period when we lived
More
in,
simply?
in closer connection with nature and polluted a lot less. But you're right, we can't go backwards, and we do have amazing technologies that can help us move forward and probably even live in closer connection to our ecosystem, but like in a very efficient way.
Well, and if you think about it, green is the intersection between nature, learning to use the principles of nature, and technology, and taking the best from each of them. I have a friend who's a renowned green home architect. And one of the first things he does is uses the orientation of the sun and the cross ventilation that you can get in the home. And he builds in homes with chimney effects so the hot air can go out the top. This is the way we used to build homes before we had electricity. Mm. And there's absolutely no reason those techniques shouldn't still be followed. But when electricity became so popular and so cheap, we didn't have to think that way anymore. And now we do. And now we also have, no touch homes that we can do with smart home technology. You combine that with, so there's a company that sells a skylight that has a sensor in it, and it will automatically open when the temperature and or the humidity in the home get to a certain point, and it will naturally ventilate it out through that skylight. That's a beautiful connection between technology and between nature.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kinds of things like that we can use in our homes. And that's, think about it. If you wanted to go off grid, technology makes that possible. And it makes it possible for us to still live in a home that's doing everything we want.
Yeah.
We couldn't have done that 30 years ago.
You have the technology episode, and I took a listen to it, and it was really interesting.
There's a couple on smart home technology, and my guest co-host, Tony, works in smart home technology and other types of products that are related to audio video for builders in St. Louis. So he's a treasure trove of information. He teaches me a lot.
Nice. And speaking of skylights as well, and maybe this was on your podcast too, but it's the skylight tubes going from the roof into and I've seen one built in a home. I've only seen one, but in the house that I grew up in, we had skylights in our upstairs attic office area. So that home was way ahead of its time and had an office and skylights.
There you go.
Two very simple but useful things. And I mean, it was so nice. You could see when it was dark. Sometimes you could see stars.
Right.
Yeah, I love that natural light just flooding in. And where better to get it than from the ceiling?
Yeah. Yeah. And simple things like where we place our windows when we're building can make such a huge difference. And a lot of times we don't have someone working with us that will consider those things or thinks to consider those things. But using a little of that common sense from our grandparents can be helpful. So.
Mm. Yeah. Well, Marla, thanks so much for going through your 5 myths with me today on modern ways and doing this with my guests and also educating me. And I'm really looking forward to working with you in the future. And yeah, I'm excited to stay in contact with you.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to have found you. Thank you, Joan.
Yeah, so listeners, Marla and I found each other because, well, she found me because her friend was reading the International Climate Action Challenge book, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
your friend told you about the book. And Joan, the author of the book, is, I think, episode number 5 for me, or maybe number 4. But anyway, she's in my podcast reel as well. And then my name is mentioned in a paragraph of that book, which I really appreciate. Thanks, Joan. And then Marla said, "Oh, I want to look into this name," and reached out to me on Instagram. And then now we're here.
You never know who you're going to meet where. Some of my best relationships have come from online connections. So there you go.
Cool. Well, before we close out the episode, I do just want to thank my podcast sponsor, which is Hopkins Dermatology, based in Monroe, Louisiana. Hopkins Dermatology is run by Dr. Janine Hopkins, 25 years plus board certified dermatologist. And y'all can go visit the website hopkinsdermatology.com to make an appointment, purchase products that she herself has made. Not like a witch with a cauldron in the back, but she did. But these are her very own products. They have antioxidants, green tea polyphenols. They're also, I would call, within the green blanket. And then she also has mineral makeup products that are mineral-based products because she's a green-minded lady. And so thank you to Hopkins Dermatology for sponsoring this podcast episode. And thank you, Marla, for being on my show today and for reaching out to me.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be able to work together.
Yeah, me too. And we will catch y'all next time, podcast listeners.